Dear listener, you sweet, sweet, sweet listener, here's the skinny. We recorded this episode back in January of 2025. There was a tragedy that struck, and the episode kind of had to lie dormant for a little bit, but I still wanted to put it out. So, Punch Counterpunch is not going anywhere, but we will still continue on with episodes when we can. Just wanted you to know. Okay, we're going to listen to the episode now. Okay, I go bye-bye now. No, really, I'm really leaving this time. You know, what even is a hedgehog? I cannot recall to mind what a hedgehog actually looks like. So, okay, I'm really leaving this time.
Ladies and gentlemen, for tonight's main event, Punch Counterpunch, bringing you the opinions you love and especially the ones you don't. Here are your hosts, Gabriel Fast and Ethan Maestri.
This is the comeback nobody asked for. Like, no one has been missing us, right?
No, nobody's asked for this. Nobody wanted this.
No. Well, this is...
Okay, let's put it a different way. They didn't know they wanted it, and they still don't want it.
Yeah. Yes. That's a really good way of putting it. It's like, you know... We're really just doing this for us. You know what I mean? At this point. But
man, we're coming in here in fuego.
I know.
Let's do this, huh?
I know. In true Punch Counterpunch fashion. You know what I mean? And I'm enjoying a delicious beer. Shout out. You probably can't see it. Dirk's Tavern. I'm doing a Michelob Ultra this evening.
Nice.
I do like some Mich Ultra from time to time.
It's the dead of winter, though. Michelob Ultra does not come into my mind in the dead of winter. So props to you for watching them calories.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really... It's kind of crazy. Like, a metamorphosis has happened. I don't really drink that much. I don't really even keep, like, beer in the house at all anymore, really. So, like, when I want a beer, I just go out and grab, like, a tall boy or something, and then I'll just kind of nurse that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, good times.
So, all right.
I have the trusty water next to me, so...
Very nice. I also have water. You know me. I can't just have one beverage. One bevy. You know what I mean?
I hear you.
Ladies
It
and
is the
gentlemen,
tradition.
yes, it is the tradition. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Punch Counterpunch. I am your host, Gabriel Fast, and sitting to my left, or to his right, or to his left, I don't know, is Ethan Maestri. You help me guide this ship to whatever port we might find ourselves in. You know what I mean?
Let's play a little mini game here as we start Punch Counterpunch.
I love mini games.
If you can guess which side of the screen I'm on my screen, I'll host this one.
Ooh, you're on the right.
Incorrect.
Dang it!
Only because I don't want to host. I actually am on the right. So. But you're hosting.
So you're a liar. You're actually lying.
I'm a liar. I am a liar, yes.
That's okay. You know, we were talking briefly off mic. We have a couple things lined up this evening. We're recording. It's the 4th of January, and you know, I don't know, it must be the new year, but I was like, you know what? Yeah, I think we're gonna try and start podcasting again. You know, I'm in a much different place now. I'm not in the trailer anymore, which is nice.
Yeah,
so,
it looks like you can spread out there just a bit.
I can, yeah. I have a full on,
keyboard too.
Yeah, sorry. You know what I mean? It's nice to be able to just go from music to podcasting or content, and then, you know, obviously I work from home, so you know, it's like this is my perfect little area just for me.
It looks like a nice workspace.
Yes, it is. It is.
To be creative.
So we got a new apartment. We moved to Joplin, Missouri, and we'll talk about that a little bit. But we got a new apartment, and we decided that this is actually technically supposed to be the master bedroom, but I was like, nah, like, we're going to use this so I have a bathroom right there. You know what I mean? It's just, you can just get up. So the only time I ever leave this room is to get food or to grab a drink of water. But I mean, this is where I spend most of my time. And I got to say, like, I'm pretty content. You know, so it's I see now why the isolating, it can be dangerous, you know, because you just start loving it. You know what I mean? You start loving being alone, doing your thing.
You know, we were talking about getting together, and I'm just like, so what time you want me to show up? And you're like, no. We're still doing this Zoom style.
Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately, we don't have it set up yet. I have plans to get this to be a proper, like, be able to just walk in and hit record, but I'm still kind of figuring out the logistics of what, doing a live show logistically, that's a completely different ball game, so doing it virtually, it makes it so easy. And it is worth mentioning, like, we're in the same town now, like, you're just a stone's throw away. But, yeah, I just figured for the sake of what for the sake of just keeping it consistent, and like I already have all this stuff made, it's like
We're under a winter storm watch or whatever it is. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, let's be safe. Yeah.
Yes, let's be safe. That's a good way to put it. That is a good way to put it. So tonight's entertainment, ladies and gentlemen, or today, like depending on what you're doing, we have a couple of things we're going to be talking about. So obviously, it's been 8 months since our last show. That's crazy to say. We're going to do some catching up, talk about what life's been like, talk about what video games we've been playing, what hobbies we've been taking on. And then later in the show, me and Ethan are going to discuss a topic that his response whenever I sent him this worried me. The note just says, "I like Nickelback now." So we'll get into that. Nickelback doesn't suck. Actually, I don't really understand where that all came from, because I was, and I'll say, ladies and gentlemen, actually we'll save it. We'll save it. See, I'm maturing. We'll save it. Okay, thank you. And then also, we're going to be kind of touching on, I don't know, we might get to it, we might not, but I just kind of want to talk about like the pulse on pop culture right now. Like, I don't know, maybe it's just me getting old or older, and like the bewilderment that I once had for a lot of things is kind of slowly fading. I still love it, obviously, but I'm not holding things like in the highest regard that I used to, and it's interesting, as you age, but we'll get into that.
I think how that conversation is going to go is going to filter nicely into, it's a new year. We're rebooting PCP here. What are we looking forward to for 2025? And I think that's going to show you just how plugged into pop culture we are.
Yeah, exactly. Because that's a really good point. So, Ethan, it's been 8 months, my friend. Like, obviously, we're in similar circles. We see each other often still, but it's one of those things, like, we don't really like talk a lot outside of this podcast for whatever reason. But how have you been? What's been new in your world? Like, the listeners are dying to know.
Oh, sure. Well, it's not really any different for me than it ever has been. I mean, still in the same house, still doing the same things, just not on social media and not, reaching out and podcasting. And it's been nice for the last 8 months to just not engage. If you're the certain personality type, and I recognize that I'm one of those, I can put myself out there for a long period of time. And after a while, I just kind of I hit a wall, and I need to disappear for a while. And it helps me with my own mental state to be able to decompress and put those schedules that I put on myself, to set those aside. It's not that I don't want to come back to them. I'll just do them. I've become comfortable with coming back to them when I feel like it. It was back in August, I realized that Ryan Mazzocco and I have the Drive Back the Night podcast. We started that 10 years ago. We started that in October or November was the first episode when it rolled out in 2014. And 2024 makes a decade. Would make a decade in November. So I got together with him and said, "Hey, let's record like a 10th anniversary podcast." And we did that, and the conversation immediately afterward was, we've got to get back into it. We've got to finish that show up. And here we are, 5-6 months later, and we still haven't recorded the first episode of 24 more that we still need to do to finish that series. Our notes are done. My notes are done. I've had them done for almost 2 years now. But, it's been rough getting back into a schedule. And I've been trying to schedule with Ryan, but it hasn't worked. It works out or doesn't work out for various reasons. I don't fault him for that. He's got a very busy life and a lot of responsibility. So it'll happen when it happens. It's still on the table, still trying to get that done. So as far as podcasting goes, I still have a love for it. I still want to be involved. You texted me the other day and say, how would you feel? And I almost felt like you were saying, do you want to, it almost like felt like you were asking, do you even want to do this anymore?
Yeah, there was definitely an
And I
energy to that, but it wasn't like it meant to be kind of like a broad, like just like a feel out. You know what I mean?
yeah
Like and because if not, it was like if there's because if I can, like I'll interject. I'm similar. Like I can give, and then I think you can relate to this. Like there comes a period of time where you just don't have that much to say,
yeah.
and I
The
think
tank feels dry.
yeah, exactly. And I think that's exactly what you want is you want to leave some back in the tank so that whenever you come back to it, it's like, oh yeah, like,
Yeah.
I love this. And
Yeah. So, like I said, trying to get Ryan going with Drive Back the Night was kind of feeding my desire to be behind the microphone again anyway. But when you reached out to me, it was perfect timing because I was already feeling that was jonesing to get back behind the mic and to put my thoughts out there on the few things that I've been watching going on, just holding my 2 cents worth to myself. And it's good. So I'm excited to get back into a conversation with you about just things in general that we're jazzed about or that we're not so pleased about. Because aside from the podcasting thing or the lack thereof, I'm still doing the gaming thing. Recently upgraded my PC from the 2070 card to a 4070. I've been playing several games that have one of which I am just absolutely over the moon about right now, to the detriment of playing other games that I really would like to get to. But yeah, so that's been going on. I've still been working on the model railroad. We've talked about that a few times in the last couple of years. And I'm at a point now with it where it's operable and I very much enjoy just doing operations on it. I've got all of my industries built except for a few add-on buildings and things like that and details and scenery. Those things aren't there yet, but it'll get there. It's a hobby. I mean, if I ground on it for 2 months or 3 months to try and finish it up, it wouldn't be enjoyable. And so, I continue to piddle out in the garage on nice evenings and enjoy that hobby as well.
I think as creatives, and this kind of harkens back to what we were talking about just a minute ago with the podcasting, but, there's always this deep-seated feeling that I don't think we talk about enough, which is, oh, once this is done, this is over. Like, it's almost like you stop yourself from, like, getting too far into something too quickly because you want to enjoy, like, the longevity of the process, and, like, once it's complete, it's like, oh, now I have to figure out something else to do, in a way. And I think, like, it's not to say that you don't want to complete the thing, and I think that can kind of tip into, like, procrastinating on certain things. Like, I've been super guilty about that. But in the same thing, it's like, it's almost like by leaving something unfinished, you're saying to yourself, like, I'm okay with this not ending anytime soon, basically. Yeah. But I want to finish it, but at the same time, I'm selfish with my time, and it's like, I want to make sure I enjoy everything. It's like there's this song I was making the other day, and, like, I've just been making music that, like, really, that I just like, that I like, me personally. I'm not trying to make it for anyone else. And, it's like something will happen, and I'll hear what needs to change, and I'm like, for me to like it. And then my instinct is to, like, oh, I just want to finish all this super quick. But, like, I sat down, I did something for, like, an hour. I recorded some vocals for, like, an hour. I was like, okay. I ended up not using any of it. Like, I videoed myself, like, the whole nine. And I was listening back to what I had done, and I was like, nope. Like, so, but in a way, it's like, it's frustrating, but at the same time, it's also, I think it gives us an opportunity to stay consistent with something or to, like, keep something alive, over a long period of time.
Yeah. I've listened to a number of podcasts that talk about the hobby of model railroading, and it does very much feel like there are two different types of people when you approach that particular hobby. There are those people that want the building of the layout and the creating of the layout. That's the hard part. That's the part they don't like. And that's such an uphill battle for them to get it designed, built, and in place. What they want is the finished product. And then for a long time after that, they have friends come over and they operate trains and they have fun on big layouts like that. That's one type of model railroader. The other type is you enjoy the process. And when the process is done, you tear it down and you start over and you build something else. You design, you create, and you build something else without spending a lot of time on the table, right? Operating the trains. And I feel like I fall into that second category. I'm enjoying the thing being built and creating and being able to make adjustments right now when I want to. When it's finished, I know I'm going to have that itch to just immediately level it and start all over again because I want to be in that loop of creating something.
Sure, yeah, and I mean, I think that's like, I've read a lot. I've read a couple of books, on just like one of them is Rick Rubin's The Creative Act, and there's lots of people that have varying opinions on Rick Rubin. I think he's really smart. I like his take on stuff. Like, people overcomplicate the idea of something being good. Like, you don't know what good is. Like, you don't specifically know what good is. You know what you like.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
Kubrick said, guess what? You're not that special. If you like it, someone else is going to like it. It's one of those things where it's like the best creative act to be in, and this kind of goes into Rick Rubin's book, is like, and I 100% agree with this, is you take your time, but once you're done, you move on. It's like, oh yeah, I really had, and I've been learning that with my own particular projects. It's like, you don't want to spend too much time on one facet of the thing, because you get hung up on that, and then you derail the whole thing, and then like the whole thing ends up being thrown off because you spent all this time on this one thing, Yeah. So I definitely relate to you on what you're saying of just like, okay, like once I've decided, it's kind of like with video games too. Like there will be times where if I'm really enjoying a game, I'm like taking it all in, every detail, every nook and cranny, everything. And then, sometimes you hit the 40, 50, 60 hour mark. Sometimes it's like the 30-hour mark. And I'm like, all right, let's wrap this up. You know what I mean? Like, let's move on to something else.
No,
and like
that's
that
brilliant.
totally, yeah.
Because I'm right there with one of the games that I'm playing right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like you feel like you've seen what you need to see, and then it's like, okay, I just need to like railroad this thing and like get to the ends because I'm itching to get to the next thing. Not to say this thing that I'm doing right now isn't great, because it is, or that I really love this thing that I'm doing. But I know for me personally, I have to move on from it, because if you don't, you spend too much time with it, you get obsessed. You get obsessed with like these little tiny things that like eventually I just feel like it can sour you on an experience sometimes, like creatively, video games, like there's been so many times where, and I still do this, when I force myself to finish something, to say I finished it, like it's like, okay, well, I finished that. The first two acts were great, but then the last, I was like, oh, it kind of fell apart at the end, like stuff like that. It's just hard to like get in that mentality though, of like keeping a consistent experience the whole time through, that either you're playing a game or creating something or whatever. So I totally relate to you on that.
And it's hard to maintain. I'm one of those types of people, and I know you're the same way too. When I latch onto something, it's single-minded focus, right? And then once you achieve whatever that goal is that you've got in your mind for that particular thing, if you don't have the next step, I often do run into that situation where I'll walk away from it. And some projects I have just walked away from completely and have never gone back to, because I was so singularly focused that I kind of burnt myself out getting to that point. And then once I achieved it, it was like, I don't see myself going any further here. And
or I don't feel any different. It's like what you're saying, it speaks to me like early days of Wannabe Critic stuff. It was like, I was hot to trot. I was like, okay, we have to make as many shows as possible and make as much content as possible, because that'll get me to where I can like do this for a living. And like, like you start attaching all these things to it. And like, you become singular focused. It becomes about the end quote or the end goal rather than the journey. And that's bad. So, I totally agree with that.
The bad thing about starting a podcast empire is it doesn't really end. You know? You have to say at some point, okay, we're going to wrap this up.
Thank God I branded myself as a wannabe.
yeah. But anyway, as far as what I've been up to, I mean, like I said, there's not really anything new to talk about. It's been good that I have been able to find a plane and just stay on it. And I've been very comfortable with that. We've done some traveling and whatnot in the last few months. Though I enjoy traveling a lot more than I used to when I was younger.
So let's pivot there. So we've done kind of the rigmarole, catch up, whatever, nonsense that no one cares about. No, I'm kidding. Let's pivot to, so you've been traveling. Like, what have you been doing? Like, where have you gone? What have you experienced? Like,
We
what made an impact on you? You know?
my wife and I did another cruise about a month and a half ago, and this time we went to the Western Caribbean and Mexico and Honduras and Roatan Island was just an absolutely gorgeous experience. We were there just as a tropical storm slash hurricane was blowing in within a day or two. So the day that we were there, it was very wet, but we got to go on a taxi drive. Hired a taxi outside of the port, which you're not supposed to do really, but we did because we had a decent lead with the friends that we were with. And so we took this taxi ride and went to a local rum distillery, and I brought home a bottle of spiced rum that you can't buy in stores here. So, it's that thing where you go and see places that you would never imagine, didn't know existed. And also to just get in amongst the residents of the island and to see life from their perspective. And it really was enjoyable. And Roatan's a gorgeous island, but not on a rainy day. I mean, it's still gorgeous, but we're looking around at the water and the breakers coming in off of the coral in the ocean out, a few hundred yards out from the beach that we're standing next to. And you can just see the beauty of the place. And it's like, I wish I could come back here in the sunshine. And we plan to.
Very
But,
nice.
yeah, extremely nice. And so, we got to experience a little bit of that. Kind of not the touristy. It was touristy, but it was local places that
Right.
not
Not your
everybody
typical,
goes to.
not
Yeah.
your typical, yeah, like,
Yeah.
yeah. Well,
And
that's dope.
Yeah, and being able and that was kind of the experience of the whole trip because it was rainy kind of most of the time. So we kind of had to hunt around and figure out where can we have fun. And we did.
Right.
And it was a great experience.
So you and the family, or you and just you and Dion and a couple other
Just
people, or
Dion, myself, and a couple of two other couples that we like
Okay.
to travel with. So
very
yeah.
nice.
Yeah.
Very nice. Anything else outside? Anything else like other than that? Or I mean,
No, not anything notable. Travel in the United States isn't all it's cracked up to be. It's not
There's
that
some-
exciting.
yeah,
There
I
are
mean,
some good places. but
there's some
yeah.
cool places. I mean, I think, someone I work with, they made a really good point. Like they have this thing in their office, and they've been to almost every single state, and they were saying it's like, yeah, it's great to travel like and go elsewhere beyond the United States. That's great, but he's like, there's so many places in our own backyard that like you'll never see.
Yeah.
It's like. And I'd be lying if I said I didn't want to go to all 50 states. Like that would be cool,
Yeah.
to know that you've been there. But at the same time, I get what you're saying. Like, you go to a city and then it's like, here we are. It's another city
Yeah.
where everything looks the same. And
It may be a little bit wrong to say it out loud, but I mean, we spent 3 days in New Orleans before getting on the ship and going on the cruise. And New Orleans, I had always wanted to see the town. And we spent some time there. And okay, the World War II museum was fantastic. My brother and I spent a morning, Saturday morning, just wandering around the seven buildings that is the World War II museum. Fascinating stuff. A lot of really great things to see there. A lot of interesting history to be able to stand right in front of and enjoy. But we did go down to Bourbon Street. And like I said, it may not be the right time to talk about Bourbon Street, considering what happened on the first with the tragedy that took place down there. The man drove his truck through the barriers and into the crowd while they were celebrating New Year's morning. It was about 3 o'clock in the morning. Yeah, so
that's really sad. I hadn't heard about that.
so I mean, we're not here to talk about mass casualty events, but I do the pictures of where the truck stopped. I remember walking past the bar
Right.
that's on the opposite side of it, and it's poignant to know that just a month and a half before I was right there.
Right.
That said, Bourbon Street's a unique experience, and now that I have seen it and experienced it on a Friday night, I don't have to go back.
Sure.
You know, because there was
Voodoo,
yeah,
voodoo.
well, not just. I mean, it's any imaginable vice. You know, you're only
Right.
a few steps from it, and you can
Yeah.
see it. It's obvious, and anybody that's
When
been down there that's watching, you know what I'm talking about. And so,
there's yeah.
you know, it's those types of places that it's like, yeah, I don't have to experience this.
We were actually in New Orleans too. We were actually in Kenner, Louisiana. Just it's just like literally right across the way from New Orleans. We didn't go strictly into New Orleans, but there was a vibe there in its own right, and I was like, man, this just feels kind of just, not to hate on anywhere where it was from. It just felt kind of like sketchy. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, I can definitely
Now,
pick up. What
now
you're
that
laying down.
said, Cafe Du Monde was a wonderful experience. Coffee and beignets are incredible, and I would gladly go there for a coffee and a beignet again. That's
Imagine if you could teleport like to your favorite spots. You know what I mean? It's like, oh
yeah,
man, remember that thing? And you just go boop, and you're just there.
and
That'd be
have
great.
it.
Like
Yeah,
Jumper.
that would be
Oh
wonderful.
man, that would be
Yeah.
amazing. Maybe one day.
Yeah.
What
Anyway,
else?
that's me.
What?
No, that's me.
That's it.
Short and sweet. Well, relatively short. And man, now you got me thinking about beignets. Sweet. Anyway, yeah.
Well, it sounds like you've had an exciting. You've
It's
been
been
up
an
to some
exciting
things.
few months. Yeah.
It's been exciting, but it's also been like calm and
Old Duder's kept himself busy. So
yeah, that's good. It's good to be busy. It's good to find yourself in a situation where you just know what you're doing and you don't have to think, like you just know. I don't know. I guess some people would call that the mundane ins and outs of life, but I don't know. I think it's kind of nice to just not have to think about what's next, like you just know.
yeah.
So
I'm a little curious though. You've been a busy boy.
I have been very busy.
And I don't think we've done a podcast where you have actually been able to talk about the thing that you have spent most of your creative
Juice.
juice on. Yeah, that has kept us for the last 8 months not doing a podcast.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong. Yeah, and I've talked about a little bit about it. Like I posted some
Yeah.
shorts on my YouTube and stuff. But yeah, so Emma and I we have gone into the comic book business. We work with a team. Basically, in a nutshell, Emma and I we're kind of a team. We're leading the company. Emma is our executive, so the one that keeps everybody on track, and I am our creative lead. So what that means is Emma keeps us on track. I keep the creatives on. I communicate with the other creatives, and Emma makes sure the creatives are actually staying on track. So that's kind of what we do in a nutshell. We've been traveling all across the country to different Comic Cons just to kind of get a feel for, what we're doing. And
Talk about that experience because I used to do Geekly Retrospect. Well, Age of Geek actually, and would have Brandon while he was doing Comic-Con trips, and he would
Right.
talk about little experiences that he's had on that. What anything stand out to you as far as the con experience?
yeah, I mean, it's a ton of work. You got to have your game face on, and my technical title is like creative director, so I end up doing a lot of like our social media posts and like constructing the voicing for how we want to communicate. And I'm also the one talking to people at the shows. So you're talking about a situation where, this last con we went to, there was 40,000 people. So it's like, it's just chaos and you just have to be on and like, you can't have a bad attitude about it or like, it's like, oh, this is my dream, right? Okay. Like, so it's equal amount hard work, equal amount reward. And it's a very humbling experience, I would say, just because, out of the 300 people I talked to at one of these shows, they don't know that we drove all this way and brought all this equipment. And it was like, it's always kind of hell to set up because we got this big backdrop and we have all the stuff we bring. And I mean, it can be a lot sometimes, I mean, it's work, legitimately. It's honest work. So, you start to have a lot more respect for people that have made it because you realize that they did the exact same thing that you're doing. They got told no a million times. You know, whenever I talk to people and I'm like, hey, do you like comic books? Like, they don't know that I've put like pieces of myself into this thing, because that's what you do when you don't know if like it's going to work. Like, you just like, well, we're doing this, like, we're going full on, like, we're not leaving anything on the table type thing. So whenever they're like, you know, you're trying to reel them in and be like, you know, hey, do you like comic books? And they just, you know, they'll look at you and just be like, yeah, and they just walk away. You know, it's just like, oh, like, you have to have thick skin. Like, you have to just be prepared to be told no. And, you know, like I said, it's humbling for sure. But go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, we might have this as part of the pop culture conversation, because you're getting a taste of what directors that have fanboys decrying their effort to put a film or a television show together. They have to deal with that internally.
Yeah.
That rejection. But there's also the acceptance from others.
Right.
And you're having a little bit of that, I'm sure, with the books that y'all are rolling out now.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, you start to kind of get it. Like, once you know how much work goes into constructing a script, editing a script, seeing that script go from script to concept, you know, thumbnails to actual finished product. I mean, we're talking weeks and weeks of work to make something quality. If we wanted to churn out like your good old boy comic, like that's just meant to be kind of quick, we could do that, but we're not gonna. Like, we want to make a splash. And
by the way, I've got a stick figure comic that I did in paint that I'm sending to you. I want you to approve it and see
and publish it.
Go somewhere with
yeah.
it.
And you know, that is the beautiful thing about this company, though, is there's all kinds of opportunity available. And like, you know, that's the beautiful thing, is when we go to these shows, we're looking for artists. We're looking for people that have that are passionate about what they do, because we never know what the future holds. And like, we want to have an open kind of line of communication for future collaborators. So that's another thing, you know, it's like, obviously I'm the wannabe critic, but you start to look at things differently whenever you're the one actually doing it yourself. Mm-hmm. And, you know, it's like, obviously we're not like some big television studio or movie studio or whatever, but the process is very similar. I mean, we're talking words on a page, storyboards and concept art, and then you piece it together and you make the finished thing. So, I mean, it's not too terribly different, but you know, it's its own unique thing. So you do have kind of anytime I see another comic book creator, I always make sure, like, I will usually buy one of their books. Like, even if they don't buy our books, like, I want to support the people that have obviously been doing it a lot longer than we have, because like, this is my job, but these people, this is their free time. Like, this is their side hustle. This is their dream they're trying to make happen. This is like, oh, I work full time and like I had a day or two to do this. And, you know, like, they're going for it. And it's just like, there's a lot of heart and just a lot of passion in these things. So it's just been amazing to be around like all these other creators that have like really stuck it out, and like, you can tell they're advancing and like moving on. It's like, oh man, like, I want to be like them. You know what I mean? So,
yeah. Okay. So that's the humble part.
Yeah.
You're in awe. You're humbled by the experience. Give us names. What's the biggest names you've shook hands with?
So I did meet Ray Park.
Yeah?
Yeah, I did. So it was tear down at the show, and he was just happening, like, I was taking stuff out to the van, and he was just chilling by the dock, like by the loading dock. And I was like, I'd walk up to him, I'm like, Ray? And he was like, you know, like, and he was super nice guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I met, there's when we were in New Orleans, it just happened, or no, we were in Cape Girardeau, Missouri. There's like a horror franchise called Terrifier. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's about clown. Nope. It's about this clown. That guy was there, and
that's why I've never heard about it.
Yeah. So this guy, yeah. So this guy, like, it just so happened that the week before, it was like the #1 movie in America, and that following weekend was the Comic-Con. So there was all these like horror fans there, but he was it was before the show started, you know, or it was like right as the show started, first day. I see this guy walking, and I was like, man, that guy kind of looks kind of familiar. And at that time, we were giving away free bags as conversation starters. Be like, hey, you want a free bag to put your stuff in? And he just looked at me and he was like, oh, no, thanks, man. I appreciate it, And then it hit me. I was like, oh, that was the Terrifier guy. You know what I mean? Super nice.
Yeah.
And that is kind of the crazy thing is like, I haven't really met a ton of big names. The last one we went to at GalaxyCon, there was a bunch of big names there. But I mean, we're talking super long lines. Like that was like your more typical con experience. Like the second the doors open.
To have the more informal, you would have to be in the green room, which I'm guessing you're probably not in the green room.
No, not at this point in time. Maybe one day that'd be cool. I don't know,
Hey,
but
wow, that would be something.
yeah, that would be wild, right? I mean, it is validating whenever like, our passion comes through whenever we talk to people, like the organizer of Cape Con, shout out. He was like, you guys are professional, like you guys are super cool, like, we'd love to like collaborate with you. Like it's obvious like you guys are really serious about this. You've put a lot into your production, and that's happened a couple of times where people that are in organization of these events, they notice like what we're doing just by the way our booth's set up. It's just very professional looking, and they're like, oh, like it strikes a chord with them. So that is validating to be in that position of like, you want to work, like I'm just a wannabe, like you want to work with me. You know what I mean? Like it's been cool, but it's been really amazing. I haven't really met a ton of big names. Honestly, Ethan, I've just been like head down trying to just do this thing and like give it our best shot, because it is a unique position to be on. It is a very privileged position. It's a special position to be in. Not many people get to do what we're doing, and we are very well aware of that. So we like to pay respect where it's due, give credit where it's due, like support the people that are paving the way for this thing that is, you go into these cons and you just feel like you belong there, like whenever I do talk to people about what we're doing and just being able to connect with them on the same type of pop culture stuff that I love, and saying like, oh, hey, do you like Dragon Ball Z? Like this is super influenced, like we're super heavily influenced by Dragon Ball Z, like with our comic. And then people start chatting, and then it's like all of a sudden, like people are coming, joining our Discord, and they're like, man, Gabe sure knows a lot about comics. And it's like, oh, like I just thought I was, like I said, a wannabe, So there is a sense of like really hard work mixed with validation, mixed with like, oh, I have to work harder than ever, because, it is cool whenever people come to like tell you that they like what you've done, and like, like they kind of stroke your ego a little bit, like, oh my God, this is amazing. Like, I can't wait to see where this goes. And it gets you excited. But at the same time, it's like, okay, keep it in its right place. Like, I'm not like defined by my accomplishments. Like I'm my own person. And there was a time whenever we were doing this, like whenever we were getting started with this, I'm like, man, I don't know if I can do Wannabe Critic anymore. Like, like just very kind of hands off about like, I didn't want to ever, you just get to a point where you don't like talking down on other people's work because you can see something and see the flaws that are in it. But at the same time, it's like someone put effort into this thing. Mm-hmm. And, I relate to that now because it's like, I sat down with Ryan Dalton, shout out Ryan. We were talking, he gave me some notes on the first issue, and it's like, that's what you do. Like, like that's just a thing that you do, is like you give each other notes, and, it's like, oh yeah, you could have let this breathe a little bit more. Like, and I had asked him for notes, but at the same time, it's like, dude, if you think one person is telling any story that like you've ever consumed, like you're lying, you're kidding yourself. Like, there's so many people, like it goes through so many hands before like the thing is actually done. And that's something I had never really fully understood, like just how many layers of something to do something to the best degree of right that you can. There's so many layers that it should go through. And that, I mean, that can be super fun. It can also be super like, oh my God, why did I decide to do this?
Mm-hmm.
So they say, don't make your passions your job. I
did not take the advice.
And I think it boils down to work is work. Like work is work and granted, there's some days where I'm like world building and like working on stuff for just lore. And it's like, oh my God, I'm the luckiest guy in the world. You know what I mean? Like that's how it genuinely feels. So you have to take the good with the bad. And that's like with anything, including whatever your dream job might be. Like if you don't like to work, you're not going to be happy doing anything. So you better learn how to like fall in love with the process and what it means to be hardworking, because with anything being successful, like that's what it takes.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
Effort.
that's effort. Yeah. It's straight up
Yeah.
effort,
Yeah.
and that's really what I've just kind of gotten out of our experience with all of this is, it has been a lot of work. It has been very rewarding. It's not always easy to work with your spouse. That's a challenge. That can be a challenge. My wife puts up with a lot because, me, I can be a bit of a diva. And, in the writer's room sometimes, we're taking this very seriously. Like we take it like me as in my role, I'm like, okay, we are laying the foundation for either the next big Netflix show or the next video game. Like these are the delusions you have to give yourself in a way to make it feel like you can do it. It's like, well, if it was going to be a Netflix show, how would I do this? Like that type of mentality. And to have a vision and stick to it. And, writers, they come to you with good ideas. But at the end of the day, like you have to make the decision. And sometimes you can get pushback from stuff. And it's like, sometimes the process isn't right. Sometimes like you got to switch stuff around. Like sometimes there's just a lot of things that go into it. But I mean, there's sometimes I'm like banging my head on my desk. I'm like, oh my God, why did I like, this is the 6th time we've gone through this script and it's not right still, like, so it's just, it's humbling. It is fun. It's super. I'm like I said, luckiest guy in the world, but it's like, I've never been reminded and reassured how important it is to be humble.
Yeah.
Like it's so important and it's so lacking in our society.
Yeah.
So I'm really trying hard to like just ride that humble train and like really develop that,
And I will say this, I have been very interested in to see how the process is going for you and how you do, because I know you're capable of dealing with it. But I've been very hands off because I haven't wanted to, pepper you with all sorts of questions about this and that and the process, and then how does this work and how's it, what's the payoff, and and I want to go through all of that, but at the same time, it's why we don't have hours with actors or directors or things like, because it's a job for them, and at the end of the day, they just want to sip whiskey and catch up with friends. They don't want to talk about the job constantly, or if they do, let that be their decision.
Right.
It's not on me to lean on you for it. So
yeah, and to be 100% honest, you can ask as many questions as you want because I'm.
Oh, I know. You'd be willing to talk all the time.
Yeah,
it's just usually your wife's sitting there, and she always says, "Let's leave work at work."
that is one thing.
So I try to be respectful of that.
Emma is so good at her job; it is insane. Being in a team setting, with Wannabe stuff, it's like I'm the one doing everything, and it's like I had put together the website and the shorts, and like you learn how to do multiple jobs, and then this is the first time I'm really coming in to a team setting where there's a website guy, there is a graphic designer, Emma's the one that's actually keeping everything on track. Like I have to then just redirect all this energy into my lane, and that's been hard for me because me, I like to be a part of every part of the process, and I want to be a part of every level because I genuinely believe, maybe it's pure delusion, I genuinely think that I can have skill to some degree in every level of it,
but it doesn't work in the environment you're talking about.
It doesn't work that way. So there's just been a lot of learning. It's been a lot of learning, just a ton of learning, and I think it's similar. Go ahead.
Well, I just a thought popped into my head. We were talking about cons earlier, and I just saw a flyer the other day for February 15th, 16th. There's a local con, Missouri con. Are you guys going to be there?
We're going to be there.
I might have to buy a ticket and just swing by and pick up a book.
Have you been to one before?
I have not been to. I've been to one con in my life. We snuck in to Dragon Con in Atlanta, Georgia, in 2006. I snuck past the security and went wandering around the autograph booths and saw some of the cast from Firefly and was just like, oh, this is cool. I'm not supposed to be here.
Right.
Because I have not paid money. And I didn't have a lanyard on either. So how they let me walk around in there. But, but that's the only con experience I've ever had. I need to go to a local one.
Dude, it's a blast no matter what con you go to. I mean, it kind of reminds me of like whenever you see a movie and it's like ancient times or like Bible times and you see all these merchants with all of their wares and you're like, please, please come by,
Yeah.
like that's kind of what
Yeah.
it feels like.
Yep.
It's
Except
essentially
it's all cool stuff.
yeah, it's a trade show for nerds. Like
Yeah.
that's literally what it is. And you know, you have your indie creators, you have your big creators sometimes that come there, like that set up really extravagant looking booths. You know, you have just your merchandise guys that are like just trying to sell you figures or pop figures and like memorabilia, whatever. You have comic people with comic grading stuff. It's just a giant mishmash of all this stuff, and it's right. If like I feel right at home, and I'd be lying if I said there's not times where I'm like, oh my god, like this is me and Ethan's people. You know what I mean? Like, so yeah, it's been a trip, and I'm more than happy to talk about it anytime. But it is, yeah, it's like it's still kind of like it still had like sometimes I'll be working on something and it'll hit me all of a sudden what I'm actually doing, and then it's like, okay, like I want to, like, okay, just do the work, try not to expect anything crazy, just try your best and just keep going, That kind of brings us into our pop culture discussion. I appreciate you asking about what I've been doing. I have been a very busy boy. Pop culture is a big part of my job now, and I find myself just ever so reluctant to get into anything new. Like, I'm more in a period of my life now where I'm like, okay, the things I really like a new game, a new book, a new comic, like, of course, yeah, give me that new stuff all the time. Like, I'll try anything. But as far as like really diving into like and like attaching myself to a franchise of any kind, is there anything out there these days? I mean, like, what new thing has come around that has just blown the general populace away?
General populace, that doesn't happen anymore.
It doesn't.
The society that we live in is so fractured and so compartmentalized. You find your place in the internet and you find that group that you're with that's into the same thing that you're in, and then everything else is outside of those walls, and you don't hear about it. You don't experience it. And that shared experience that we used to get at the cinema or something like that really doesn't exist anymore. I mean, the world is you and I are about to talk about a movie that is now, 28 years old, right? And I cast my mind back to 27, 28 years to when that movie came out, and it was all anyone knew about amongst the people that I knew at the time, right? But whether they were 60 or 40 or 20, or in my case, 16, everybody knew that movie was out. And across that broad age range, everyone was going to go see it, and did. And we had something in common to talk about. And that doesn't exist. That world is gone now.
Yeah, I mean, it is, and I have a lot to say about that movie. We're going to be reviewing Star Trek First Contact. So make sure...
I was trying to leave this evergreen, but okay,
well,
whatever.
Yeah, whatever. Well, it is evergreen. Go over to Keeping It Real. You can listen to Star Trek First Contact right now, Ethan.
There you go.
That's how that's done
All
there.
right. Nice.
No,
shameless plug for the show. We're back at it. We're back in the saddle.
I know. Here we are. The other show that no one listens to.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah. It's not the same as it used to be. And it's because I believe it's 100% because we become more selfish as a society. Like last night, Emma and I, we've been trying to have date night for Friday night, right? So, we got some takeout, we got some crumble cookie, and we played It Takes Two. So I have my station here. Yeah. She's got her station's just right here. Like, she has a desk in the front room, but she also has her workbench in here with her Xbox and everything in here, so we can hang out and watch TV together, and play games together. But I got to thinking about it, and I was like, if this is all my life ever consisted of, I'd be fine. Like, I wouldn't need anything else ever again on a very primal level. And that's bad. Like, we're designed to be, like, we do need our alone time, I think, but, like, we're designed to be around other people. And, like, kind of sharpen that, and like have that resonance amongst each other. Because, you can be down in the dumps and like your homie starts talking about something and like it starts like resonating with you. And you're like, all of a sudden you go from being in like this slump that you've been in for however long, a funk of some kind, to now it's like, man, like that really made an impact on me, and the stuff that we love, like, the Star Trek, the Star Wars, there's too much of it now. Like, and having the volume of it wouldn't have been a big deal. It's every 6 months there's something new. And
I
maybe not.
think it's faster than that. If
Yeah.
you take it all into consideration, you can keep yourself incredibly distracted with pop culture.
I agree.
And it squeezes out that time to decompress, think about it, think about how it impacts you. And then part of that process is talking about it with friends,
I agree. 100%.
one-on-one or in a group. Yeah.
In a group, whatever.
And sadly, what I've noticed is it feels like more and more people turn to podcasts and they form these attachments with people that do these podcasts, and they'll never meet them face to face.
Yep.
I mean, or interact with them directly. And not to say that that's a bad thing, but it's just one more layer of isolation.
I don't want to say that pop culture is doomed or anything, because I know there's lots of new films coming out. There's lots of new comics coming out. There's lots of new things coming out with possibility to be the next big thing. Like, there's a lot of stuff out there that could, it's like, like I see some creators at these Comic Cons and I'm like, holy crap, like I could see that as an HBO show one day. Or, like you start seeing these things and it's like 1 out of 1,000 of those people are actually going to make it, and that is the sad part. Is I think we as a pop culture society are getting so sick of what exists that now we are defaulting to, let's just do our own thing. Like, regardless of, I'm having more enjoyment. This is filling this thing that I have more than anything that it's like, yeah, I love Dragon Ball Z. I love Star Wars. I'll always keep up with that stuff. Like, I'll always have my core things that I really love. But there's going to come a day where I know all there is to know about it that's been published. You know what I mean? Or a good amount of it, like a good chunk of this thing. And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, well, where do I put that like spark of desire? You know what I mean? Like that, where is this spark going to go? Like,
yeah, ultimately, just my 2 cents. And it is like you alluded to before. It's one of the reasons why we take these times to step back from doing a PCP or anything else for that matter, because what we recognize is that at the core of what pop culture is now today, it's an offshoot of consumerism, and that only has drawbacks and detriments. It's the thing that fuels economies. It's the thing that keeps that engine of economy running. It's certainly in this country and in other countries of the world. But when those things start to falter and start to fail, as we are beginning to see, I feel like we're headed for a very down cycle in economy, right? And that's going to impact people in ways that, frankly, we don't know how badly it could possibly affect the society around us. That's coming. Pop culture is going to suffer because of it. We're already starting to see pop culture suffering because of the consumerism, the consumer ideas and management decisions that are contributing to what's being made and what is being held up as this is good, this is popular, when in fact it isn't. You're being lied to, essentially.
Yeah.
And so it's just going to continue to this downwards trend that we have seen for a long time now is only going to continue. And there's going to be some peaks in there where good stuff comes along and maybe we'll get excited about it and talk about it. Maybe it'll capture our interest. That's great. I look forward to that. But the trend isn't good. And ultimately it will lead to a collapse. And, and then that will recycle into something different. And
Right.
what you and I are familiar with today and are somewhat down on at the moment, it's going to be different 5 years, 10 years, 12 years, 20 years from now. Who knows? It'll be something different.
Yeah, I agree. And it's, we're talking about it. You're just looking for like the signs, it's like I watched First Contact and I'm like, man, this was made in a way different time. Like this movie was made. This wasn't made as a movie just to exist as a movie. This was made like for people that watch Star Trek, which just happened to be the majority of the country. So it was like, instead of keeping the show going, we're making these movies. Like we've talked about this, but very rarely do we see movies made now where you go into it and it's like, oh, you don't have all the backstory. Like, yeah, you're not going to get it. Like First Contact is not standalone. Spoiler alert. Like, you kind of had to know.
And yet, watching a lot of the DVD extras on the DVD that I have of it, that's what I watched. I didn't watch the movie because I've seen it dozens of times. But watching what the writers put into that movie, they did try to make it appealing to a broad audience, those that didn't know Star Trek. I feel like in some ways they probably didn't go far enough.
Yeah,
but if they had gone that far, they would have broken what Star Trek is.
Right.
And that's what we see happening a lot today too. People are trying to cast a wide net, and it breaks the boundaries or the laws of what makes a Star Wars show a Star Wars show, or a movie, whatever the MCU or whatever it happens to be. And we see a lot of that taking place now.
Yeah, and it's like the answer just seems to be like, oh, they're not happy about it. Well, we're just going to give them a bunch more of the same.
Yeah.
Like that's their answer to it. And it's like, it's the opposite. It's the longer you go without putting something out that actually creates buzz about something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
yeah, it's the dart to the wall thing. If you carefully aim one dart and you hit the bullseye, that's awesome. If you go wide of your mark, at least you're close.
Right.
But if you just grab a handful of darts and just chuck them at the wall and see what sticks, that doesn't work great either, and you end up ruining somebody's wall and they're not happy.
Yeah, no, exactly. And it's like you get to a point where you have these die-hard people, me being one of them. Like, I love Star Wars. Like, I love it. But I just don't care about it that much right now. You know, like I do and I don't. Like, watch the first few episodes of Skeleton Crew, and I enjoyed it. But I'm in no hurry. I'm in no hurry to get back to it. I know it's going to be there whenever I'm ready for it. You know, so it's.
I'm really looking forward to Andor season 2, and I'm about to start my Andor season watch through again for the 4th or 5th time.
I have not even seen it.
Andor?
I have not watched it.
Okay, this show's done. Well, see you in another 8 months, Gabe.
Yep. Well, we might have to pod about that because
absolutely.
That'd be fun. Yeah. That would be fun. That would be fun.
One of the games the game that I'm most excited about right now is Star Wars Outlaws, because it has reinvigorated my interest in the Star Wars universe, and it's telling a decent Star Wars story. And if you are at all interested in Solo, I highly recommend this game because it's more of what that aspect of the Star Wars universe gave us. And it's, man, I've been really, really high on that. And that has reignited my interest in Star Wars, particularly for Andor Season 2 coming up here in a few months.
Is that the game you're playing that you're like, oh man, I really want to like get to the end of this, or was that a different game?
No, that's the one I was talking about, which I have now completed the main story.
Okay.
And I was extremely satisfied with it.
Awesome. I love to. I'm going to get to it at some point. We had this discussion before. It's like, I'm trying to get through some of my backlog, which is, it's shameful, honestly.
Yeah.
You know, so it's nice to be able to cross off 3, 4, 5 games off of your backlog before you actually go buy something new. And, you know, it feels more earned that way, I guess. So I'm still trying to truck along and you know, carve out some of the backlog, and then I'll get to Outlaws eventually.
I can't recommend it enough. And you were talking earlier about getting 50 to 60 hours into a game and then realizing, okay, it's time to wrap this up, right?
Right.
That's where I'm at right now. Is I just crossed 50 hours in Star Wars Outlaws. You know, I've finished the main story about hour 25, 26. And I've been enjoying just going through what's there of the game, just kind of setting goals and doing my own thing and finding treasures and things like that. But I finished up today, actually. I was sitting there and I looked at the the timer on Steam, and I just logged over 50 hours, and I'm like, I think it's time to move on to Great Circle. It's time to get my
Nice.
Indiana Jones on.
Very nice.
So, yeah.
Well, I'm going to play through the Indiana Jones game. Like, Game Pass has been really surprising me, man. Like, they've kind of cleaned up their act, and I don't know. Like, I'm starting to feel like Xbox is entering more of a, I don't know, man. Like, there's just something brewing there that just is kind of special, you know. So
I would agree. I like what Xbox is doing. I did hear somebody on YouTube the other day, though, say Xbox Game Pass and No Man's Sky have ruined the video game industry. And at first I was like, oh, come on, dude, not another one of these. But I went ahead and I listened to him for a few more minutes, and he makes a very compelling argument for both. The Game Pass thing we've argued about, not you and I, but we've had discussions about that.
sure.
And there is a plus, there is a minus, there is a drawback. The No Man's Sky kind of caught me off guard, and that's an intriguing one. And I kind of see what they're saying.
We're basically paying for people to make poor choices, and like we're like lauding them, like, because here's my take on No Man's Sky.
Okay.
All that's happened, and No Man's Sky, I've played some of it. It's great. I love it. It's fun.
Yeah.
But that whole experience, that whole thing, taught the industry that it's okay to do that.
Yes.
And we saw it with Cyberpunk 2077. Like, we've seen it time and time again. It's like, oh, here's this broken thing, but it's going to be great. Like, you know.
And the difference, though, is Hello Games, the developer for No Man's Sky, is in that unique position where they can keep working on it. And that's all they've done is refine and refine and refine and refine and update after update after update. And sure enough, this game is phenomenal compared to what was released.
Right.
But it's taken them almost 8 years to get there. And it's just because of dogged determination that they've been able to do it. Now we're seeing the Bethesdas and the Ubisofts and all of these other developers that have put out AAA games, and nobody likes them initially because they're not done.
They're broken. Yeah, it's literally like...
But instead of spending the next 5 years fixing Starfield, a year after the game's released, they've got to move on. Well, they had the Indiana Jones game that they had to move on to, which is good, but you know
it's the principle around the whole thing, and
exactly
that might need to be our next discussion. Honestly, is talking about some of that, because
we can go into that.
Yeah, that would be nice. I'm sad to say, but our time with this episode has kind of come to an end, and you know, it's just time flies when you're having fun. But I mean, it just boils down to we got another show to do. So
load the revolver, Gabe. We got to put it out back and put it down.
We do. We sure do. And it's Ethan, I got to say, it's great to be back here in the saddle. You know what I mean? It's good to, you know, do these things, and I hope we can keep it consistent. So until next time, ladies and gentlemen, this has been Punch Counterpunch for January 2025, and we will see you next time.
Auf Wiedersehen.
There it is.
The Wannabe Network is proud to present Punch Counterpunch. The show is written and produced by Gabriel Fast and Ethan Maestri. If you'd like to get in touch with the hosts, you can email us at geeklybiweekly1@gmail.com. Until next time.